It hit me like a bullet to the chest. I couldn't breathe. My hand shook so badly that I almost dropped my phone. The subject line of the email was so innocent, so mundane, yet it had the force of a wrecking ball. Your hotel reservation is confirmed, room for two. First, I thought it was a mistake. It had to be. My mind clung to that hope like a drowning person grabbing for a piece of driftwood. I never booked a hotel. I hadn't planned any trips. I wasn't going anywhere. But there it was, sitting in my inbox like a taunting, grinning ghost. Clicked it. Slowly. Like I was afraid it would explode. The email opened and my eyes scanned the details. The dates matched. It was for this weekend. The location? A boutique hotel just 2 hours away. A nice, cozy little getaway spot. The kind of place couples go to reconnect. Guest name David Collins. My husband. Of course. But then I saw it. My breath hitched so hard it felt like a gasp of pain. Occupancy, 2 adults. I stared at that line for what felt like an eternity. 2 adults. 2. Not 1. Not a solo business trip. Not a quiet night away for work. 2. My heart began to pound in my chest, slow and heavy like war drums. I tasted metal at the back of my throat. My mind fought the obvious conclusion, tossing up weak explanations. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe it's just a default option. Maybe the hotel does this automatically. But I knew better. Deep down I knew better. I scrolled further looking for the payment details. That's when the ground beneath me crumbled. He had used my account. My account, my email, my login. My husband had booked a romantic little escape with someone else. And he had done it through my account like it was nothing. My fingers hovered over the cancel reservation button. My mind was racing. Canceling it would be too easy, too impulsive. No, I needed to know more. I needed to be sure. I needed to know who. I clicked on the phone number for the hotel. It rang 3 times before a cheery voice answered. Hello, Maple Grove Boutique Hotel. How may I help you? I licked my lips trying to steady my voice. Hi. This is Sarah from Meadow Travels Agency. I'm calling to verify a reservation for one of our clients, David Collins. Can you confirm the details for me, please? Sure thing. Let me just pull that up for you, she chirped. I could hear her tapping on a keyboard, and for a few excruciating seconds, all I could hear was the blood rushing through my ears. Here it is, she said. David Collins, check-in this Friday, 2 nights, 1 king suite for 2 adults. 2 adults. There it was again. But I needed more. My voice remained calm, even though my heart was a thunderstorm. Perfect, I said, forcing a smile into my tone. Can you also confirm the name of the second guest? We like to keep records for check-in purposes. There was a pause. The woman hesitated. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to be pushed. Yes, sure, she replied, and I could hear more typing. It looks like the second guest listed is a Rachel Porter. The world went silent. The name echoed in my head like a bell tolling for the dead. Rachel Porter. I knew that name. I knew it too well. She was one of his new colleagues. I'd met her at a company dinner 3 months ago. I could still see her face in my mind, blonde, polished, wearing that tight red dress she probably thought was just professional enough. I remembered how she laughed too hard at his jokes, how her hand lingered on his arm just a second too long. And I remembered how David brushed it off. She's just being friendly, he'd said. Don't read too much into it. Now here she was. Her name was right there on a hotel reservation for 2 adults. My breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. Rage built in my chest, hot and unstoppable. It burned like a fire that had been smoldering for months, and now someone had thrown gasoline on it. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. Ma'am? The hotel clerk's voice jolted me back. Is everything okay? Yes, I whispered. My voice felt hollow. Yes, thank you. That's all I needed. Have a nice day, she chirped like she hadn't just detonated my world. I hung up the phone, and for a moment I just sat there frozen. My body felt too heavy to move. I stared blankly at the wall, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Rachel. Rachel Porter. I replayed it all in my head. The late nights at work. The sudden interest in business trips. The way he'd started guarding his phone more closely. It wasn't paranoia. It had been there all along. I stood up, hands still shaking, and opened the email again. I scrolled to the bottom and clicked cancel reservation. Click. It was done. Their little weekend fantasy just disappeared in the blink of an eye. I hoped they showed up at the hotel only to be told, there is no reservation under that name. I hoped Rachel stood there with her stupid little rolling suitcase, looking confused, humiliated. But that wasn't enough for me. No, not this time. I walked to the bedroom where David's suitcase sat open on the bed, half-packed with his business trip clothes. Button-down shirts, slacks, his favorite cologne. I stared at it for a moment, and an idea took shape in my mind. I pulled out every single piece of clothing he had packed and dumped it on the floor. Then I went to the kitchen, grabbed a bottle of red wine, and poured it over his neatly pressed white shirts. Dark red stains spread across the fabric like blood on fresh snow. Good. Next I grabbed his phone. It was locked, of course, but I knew the passcode. He'd used it in front of me 100 times without thinking. I opened his texts and scrolled. It didn't take long to find her. Rachel. She was right there. Texts back and forth. Her stupid emojis. Flirty messages. A picture of her legs by the pool. I felt my jaw clench so hard I thought I might crack a tooth. I scrolled up. 2 days ago he sent her this message. Can't wait to get away from everything this weekend. Just you and me. My vision went white with rage. I took screenshots of every single message and sent them to myself. Evidence. I was going to need it. Then, for good measure, I forwarded the messages to his boss, along with this note. Thought you'd like to see how your employee is spending his business trips this weekend. It was done. There was no coming back from this. When David walked through that door tonight, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't ask, how could you do this to me? No. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. I'd look him in the eye, show him the screenshots, and say only this. Pack your things. I already canceled your weekend with Rachel. And then I'd watch his face break. When David walked through the front door that evening, everything about him felt different. Normally he'd call out, "Hey, I'm home," like he was some loving husband returning from battle. But tonight he was quiet. Too quiet. His keys jingled in the lock, and the door creaked open slowly, like he was afraid of being seen. I was sitting on the couch, legs crossed, phone in hand, but I wasn't scrolling. I wasn't even pretending to. I just stared straight ahead, feeling the cool weight of control settling over me like armor. I heard the shuffle of his shoes on the hardwood as he stepped inside. I could feel him glance toward me, waiting for some kind of reaction. "Hey," he finally muttered. His voice was cautious, like a man walking into a lion's den. He slipped off his shoes and put his bag down by the door. You didn't cook tonight?" he asked, trying to sound casual. I didn't answer right away. I tilted my head just enough to see him from the corner of my eye. His face was tense, his smile strained. I knew that look. It was the look of a man waiting for something to go wrong but hoping, somehow, that it wouldn't. "No," I said flatly. "Not hungry." Silence. I could hear him swallow. He shoved his hands into his pockets and shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Nervous? Long day?" he asked, walking closer. "Yeah," I replied, eyes still on my phone. My fingers tapped slowly on the screen, not typing anything, just moving for the sake of it. Real eye-opener, actually. His footsteps stopped. I knew he was looking at me now, really looking at me. Trying to read me. He was good at reading people. That's how he got ahead at work, knowing how to charm his way into promotions. But I wasn't his boss. I wasn't someone he could fool with that easy, cocky grin. "Something happen?" he asked, and I could hear the edge of uncertainty in his voice. I turned my head slowly, finally meeting his eyes. His fake smile faltered the second he saw my face. I could see the realization hit him like a shock of cold water. His eyes darted to my phone, and I knew he was wondering if I'd seen something. He could always tell when I knew. "Yeah," I said, holding his gaze. "Something definitely happened." He blinked rapidly, trying to play it cool. "Okay." He dragged the word out like he was waiting for me to keep talking, but I didn't. I just watched him, quiet, calm, like I was watching a fish squirm on a hook. You want to talk about it?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck. "You seem off." That almost made me laugh. Off? I wasn't off. I was wide awake. Clearer than I'd been in months. I leaned forward slowly, placing my phone on the coffee table. I folded my hands together, elbows on my knees, and just stared at him. Not a single word. Just the kind of stare that makes a man's skin crawl. I could see it working. His eyes shifted toward his bag by the door. His brain was firing on all cylinders, calculating every possible move. Should he lie? Should he confess? Should he run? David, I said, my voice so soft it barely rose above a whisper. Do you know what I did today? His mouth opened but no words came out. He shook his head like a child caught stealing candy. No. I asked, tilting my head. Nothing to guess? No wild ideas? His eyes flicked to the bag again. I knew he was thinking about his phone, wondering if I'd seen it. I'll tell you, I said, leaning back, making myself comfortable. I got an email this morning. A confirmation, actually, for a hotel booking. Isn't that funny? I smiled at him, a cold, hollow smile. It was for this weekend. For 2 adults. His face froze. Utterly, completely frozen. He didn't even blink. His lips parted as if to say something, but he didn't. I watched his eyes as he tried to come up with a response. I could see the exact moment he realized he was out of options. He licked his lips and his breath came in shallow, quick bursts. Listen, he started, raising a hand like I was a wild animal he needed to calm down. It's not what you think. Don't. I snapped, my voice like a whip crack. He flinched. Don't insult me like that. He froze in place, eyes wide like he'd just walked into an ambush. 2 adults, I repeated slowly, savoring every word like venom on my tongue. At the Maple Grove Boutique Hotel. Sound familiar? He blinked hard and fast. His jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. I called them, I continued, voice cool as ice. Told them I was from a travel agency. Asked for the names on the reservation. I leaned forward, eyes locked on his. Do you know what name they gave me, David? He didn't answer. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. Rachel Porter, I said, enunciating each syllable like a curse. His eyes shut tight like he'd been hit in the face. Yeah, I hissed, nodding slowly. Her. I remember her. The one who laughed too hard at your jokes. The one you told me was just being friendly. My eyes narrowed. Is this still just friendly, David? Booking hotel rooms with her. Baby, please, he said, his voice cracking. He took a step forward, hands up like he was surrendering. It's not like that, I swear. It's just. Don't. I cut him off, standing up slowly. Don't you dare call me baby right now. I pointed a finger at him and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. Save that for Rachel. Maybe she'll buy it. He shook his head furiously. No. It's not like that. She needed help with some project, and it ran late, so I figured we could. Shut up. I said it so calmly, so quietly, but it stopped him like a bullet to the chest. I stepped closer, my heart pounding but my mind razor sharp. Do you know what I did after I canceled your little love nest? His eyes darted around the room like he was looking for an exit. No exits, David. You're trapped. I forwarded your text to your boss, I said, tilting my head. Every single one. I especially liked the one where you said, can't wait to get away from everything this weekend. Just you and me. I leaned in closer, eyes locked on his. Do you think your boss will like that one, David? Do you think Rachel will still laugh at your jokes when HR calls her in? His mouth opened and for once no lies came out. Just silence. Pure, agonizing silence. You're going to pack, I said, my voice deadly calm. You're going to leave. And you're going to pray that I don't send those screenshots to every single person you know. He stood there, frozen like a statue of a man who'd just seen his whole life burn to ash. His lips trembled, his shoulders slumped, and I could see it happen. The exact moment he realized it was over. Pack, I said again, stepping back and folding my arms. Don't make me say it a third time. He moved like a man in a dream, slow and stunned. His footsteps echoed down the hall. I stayed in the living room watching the front door. I didn't need to follow him. I knew he wouldn't fight me on this. Not now. Not after what I'd just done. The sound of a zipper being yanked open echoed from the bedroom. Clothes shuffled, drawers slammed. It was music to my ears. The sound of him leaving. The sound of something broken being tossed out for good. He came out, suitcase in hand, eyes downcast like a scolded child. "Don't say goodbye," I muttered, not even looking at him. "Just go." And he did. The door closed behind him, and for the first time in months, the house felt quiet. Peaceful. I sat back on the couch, letting out a long breath. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear. From relief. He was gone. Finally gone. I sat there in the quiet for a long time. The weight on my chest felt lighter, but it wasn't gone. It never just goes away that easily. My heart still raced, and the adrenaline hadn't worn off yet. My hands twitched in my lap, fingers flexing and releasing like I was still holding something I needed to crush. I glanced at the clock. 8:47 p.m. Felt later. Everything that had happened in the last hour felt like it had stretched into an entire day. The house was silent now, too silent. No sound of his footsteps pacing the kitchen. No sound of him flipping through channels on the TV. No sound of his stupid laugh whenever he watched those corny sitcoms. But it wasn't too quiet. It was just peaceful. The kind of quiet that doesn't suffocate you. The kind that lets you finally hear yourself think. I leaned back on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling the exhaustion seep into my bones. It was the kind of tired you feel after a storm, not just physical but emotional. Like every muscle in your body has been clenched for hours, and now they're finally releasing one by one. I could feel it in my shoulders, my back, my neck. Everything hurt, but at the same time it felt good. It felt earned. My phone buzzed on the table, a sharp little vibration that made me flinch. For a second I thought it might be him. David. Maybe a pathetic text begging for forgiveness. Maybe something desperate like, "Can we talk?" Or, "Please just listen." But when I glanced at the screen, it wasn't him. It was Emma, my best friend. "Uok. Haven't heard from you all day." My lips twitched into a half-smile. Emma always knew when something was off. She'd been telling me for months that David wasn't as perfect as I made him out to be. She never said it outright, but I could hear it in her voice every time I vented to her. The gentle nudges. The quiet warnings. The "you deserve better, you know that, right?" moments. I hated hearing it back then, but now? Now I knew she'd been right all along. I typed back quickly. Threw him out. "You were right." The typing bubble appeared immediately. Those 3 little dots bouncing like she was about to explode through the phone. "What?" "OMG. Call me." I didn't want to. Not yet. I didn't have the energy to relive the whole thing right now. I could still see it all in my mind, every detail as fresh as if it had just happened. His face when I said Rachel's name. The suitcase dragging behind him like a dead weight. The way he didn't even argue. He knew. He knew he had nothing left to say. I typed back. "Soon. Just need a minute to breathe." Emma replied with a heart emoji and a simple, "Proud of you." I stared at those words longer than I expected. Proud of you. No one had said that to me in a long time. Not like that. Not in a way that made me feel like I'd done something brave instead of just surviving. I set the phone down and exhaled deeply. I glanced at the hallway leading to the bedroom. His clothes were still on the floor where I'd dumped them. The wine stains were a deep dark red now, dried into the fabric like old blood. I thought about picking it all up, tossing it in the trash. But no. Not tonight. Let it sit there. Let it be a reminder. My eyes drifted to the door. I half expected it to swing open again. For him to come crawling back in with some fake apology, saying all the things he thinks I want to hear. But no. Not this time. This time I was done. The phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Emma. It was an unknown number. For a second I thought it might be a spam call. But something in my gut told me to answer. I picked it up, hesitated for half a second, then swiped to answer. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Hi, this is Jenny from Maple Grove Boutique Hotel. Is this Mrs. Collins?" My heart skipped. I sat up straighter, my fingers tightening around the phone. "Yes," I said, my voice sharp. "This is her." "Hi, Mrs. Collins. I'm just calling to confirm a cancellation we received earlier for a stay under David Collins. We wanted to make sure this was intentional and not a mistake, since it's so close to the check-in date." I clenched my jaw, my nails digging into my palm. I could hear the fake politeness in her voice, like she was trained to sound cheerful no matter what. "Yeah, it was intentional," I said, my voice colder than I expected. He won't be needing that room. There was a short pause and I heard her click her tongue. Got it. I'll mark that down as confirmed. Just so you're aware. There is a non-refundable deposit, but keep it, I said, cutting her off. Consider it a tip for your trouble. Of course, she said quickly, probably relieved not to argue with me. If there's anything else we can do. There isn't, I said, and I hung up before she could finish. I dropped the phone onto the couch beside me, letting out another long breath. That's done too. Another loose thread snipped clean. No more waiting. No more watching my phone, wondering if I'd catch him in another lie. Caught him. I ripped him out by the roots. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. Minutes passed. Hours maybe. I wasn't sure. I stared at nothing, eyes half closed, letting the weight of the night slowly drain out of me. My mind wandered. I thought about Rachel. Her face flashed in my head. Blonde hair, red dress, that little laugh she used when she knew she had everyone's attention. Did she know about me? Did she care? I didn't know. And honestly, I didn't care. I wasn't going to waste a single second of my life worrying about another woman who had less self-respect than I did. She could have him. Good luck with that. The phone buzzed again. This time it was David. His name lit up the screen like a flare in the dark. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the decline button. I didn't want to hear his voice. Not tonight. Not ever. But a part of me, a small, angry, burning part of me, wanted to hear him beg. I swiped to answer but didn't say a word. I waited. Let him be the first to speak. Hey, he said. His voice so small, so pitiful, like a man standing in the rain with nothing but his regrets to keep him warm. I just want to talk. Please. Silence. I didn't say a word. Look, I know I messed up, he said quickly, like if he spoke fast enough I wouldn't hang up. I know, okay? But we can work this out. We've been through worse, right? His voice cracked on the last word. Pathetic. I stared at the wall, eyes unfocused. My voice came out slow, steady, and cold as steel. You had a chance to work it out, David. You had every chance. You threw it away. I'm not saving you from this. He inhaled sharply like he'd just been punched. I heard him stammer, trying to think of something, anything to say. Please, he said, his voice breaking now. Please just give me one more chance. I didn't hesitate. No, I said, and I ended the call. This time I turned off my phone. I didn't want to hear it ring again.
No texts.
No calls.
No apologies.
I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of wine. For once, it wasn't to numb myself. It was to celebrate. I raised the glass to my reflection in the kitchen window. To me, I whispered. To finally choosing me. I drank deep. The wine went down smoother than I expected. Warm, rich, and just strong enough to burn a little on the way down. I let it sit on my tongue for a second longer than usual, savoring it, tasting every note like it was the first drink I'd had in years. In a way it was. This wasn't like the other nights I'd poured myself a glass of wine. Those nights I drank to forget. To blur the edges of everything that hurt. To make excuses for him, for us, for the version of our life I'd convinced myself was still worth saving. But not tonight. Tonight I drank with clear eyes. I took the glass with me, walking slowly through the house. Each step felt heavier than the last, like my body was finally starting to realize how tired it was. The hallway stretched out ahead of me, dim and quiet. I could see the bedroom door at the end of it still open. His suitcase wasn't there anymore. He wasn't there anymore. Just the mess he'd left behind. I stepped inside, eyes scanning the room. His clothes were still in a heap on the floor, stained deep red from the wine I'd poured on them earlier. His side of the bed was unmade, the blanket tossed halfway off like he'd left in a hurry. I stared at it for a long time, my eyes tracing the outline of the spot where he used to sleep. It felt smaller now. For a second I almost felt nothing.
No anger. No sadness.
Just a strange, quiet stillness. Like looking at the ruins of an old house after a storm. Pieces scattered everywhere. Damage that couldn't be undone. But somehow you're still standing there, whole, breathing, alive. I crouched down, fingers brushing against the pile of his clothes. His white dress shirt was stiff now from the dried wine. The stain had spread across the front like an open wound. I picked it up by the sleeve, holding it up to the light. The fabric swayed gently like a ghost hanging from a tree branch. I could still smell his cologne on it, sharp, clean, and familiar. I dropped it back on the floor. Let it rot. I moved to the bed next. My side was still neat, untouched, exactly how I'd left it this morning. His side was chaos. Pillows crumpled. Blanket twisted. It was like looking at a before and after picture. The part of me that used to care, that used to see this as our bed, was gone now. This wasn't our bed anymore. It was mine. I grabbed the pillow from his side and held it in my hands for a moment. I don't know why, but I pressed it to my face. Maybe I wanted to see if it still smelled like him. It did. A mix of his shampoo and that stupid body spray he thought made him smell younger. For a moment my eyes stung like I might cry. But I didn't. I'd cried enough for him already. I walked over to the window, pillow still in my hand. The street below was quiet. No cars. No people. Just the soft glow of the streetlights stretching long shadows across the pavement. I opened the window, letting in a gust of cool night air. It rushed in so fast it made my skin prickle. Without thinking, I tossed the pillow out. It fell in slow motion, flipping once, twice, before landing on the sidewalk below. The white fabric looked so out of place on the dark, cracked concrete. For a moment, I just stood there, leaning on the windowsill, watching it. No one else was outside. No one saw. Just me. I smiled. The second that pillow hit the ground, it felt like something inside me finally broke loose. Like a chain I didn't even know I'd been carrying had snapped clean in half. I reached back inside, grabbed the second pillow, my pillow, and held it close to my chest. This one was mine. This one wasn't going anywhere. I closed the window and locked it. Back in the kitchen, I poured myself another glass of wine. This time, I didn't feel the need to rush. I wasn't running from anything anymore. I wasn't chasing down answers, or trying to put together pieces of a broken puzzle. The puzzle was gone. Burned. Thrown out. My phone was still on the couch where I'd left it. I picked it up, turned it back on, and watched as it lit up with missed messages. Most of them were from David. David, I'm sorry. David, please just talk to me. David, you don't have to do this. David, I swear I'll change. David, I love you. I stared at that last message for a long, long time. It wasn't the first time I'd seen those words from him. But somehow, it felt different now. It wasn't love. It was desperation. And I knew deep down that he didn't love me. He loved having someone who would stay. Someone who would believe him. I wasn't that person anymore. I scrolled to his contact info, thumb hovering over the options. Block. Delete. Mute. So many choices. All of them tempting. I could block him and never hear from him again. I could delete his name, his number, his texts, like scrubbing away a stain. But I didn't want to erase him. Not yet. Not because I cared, but because I wanted to remember. I needed to remember this moment. I pressed mute. No more notifications. No more buzzes or beeps every time he tried to crawl his way back in. He could text me 100 times. 1,000. I'd never hear a sound. Silence is power. Emma texted me again. Emma, you better not be sitting there alone in that house. I smiled for real this time. I could hear her voice in my head, sharp and sarcastic, always knowing exactly what I needed to hear. Me. I'm good. I mean it this time. She texted back almost instantly. Emma. Proud of you, babe. Want me to come over? I glanced around the house. For the first time, it didn't feel like a house I shared with him. It felt like mine. The space felt bigger, like I'd gained something instead of losing it. Me. Not tonight. Just want to sit in it for a while, you know? Emma, I get it. But call me if you change your mind. Me. I will. Love you. Emma. Love you more, always have. I put the phone down again, this time on the kitchen counter. I didn't need it anymore tonight. No calls, no texts, no updates. No more waiting for someone else to make me feel better. I glanced at the wine bottle, still half full. For a second I considered finishing it. Why not? I deserved it. But I didn't. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. I poured the last of my glass down the sink, watching the red swirl down the drain like paint being washed away. I turned off the kitchen light, walked back to the bedroom, and stood there for a moment. The stained clothes, the empty space where his suitcase had been, the rumpled blankets on his side of the bed. I reached down, grabbed the edge of the blanket, and yanked it off the bed completely. Then I went to the closet, pulled out clean sheets, fresh pillows, and laid them down like I was making a brand new bed in a brand new home. I fluffed the pillows, smoothed out the sheets, and stood back to look at it. Perfect. Clean. Mine. I climbed in, pulling the covers up to my chin, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I didn't feel tense. I didn't feel like I had to keep one eye open, waiting for something to go wrong. I didn't feel the weight of someone else's mistakes pressing down on my chest. I turned off the bedside lamp and stared into the darkness. No texts. No calls. No guilt. No lies. I closed my eyes, let out one last deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without a single tear. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through the blinds. The warmth of it spilled across my face, soft and golden, like the first light after a storm. For a second, I just lay there, eyes half open, letting it wash over me. No alarm. No movement on the other side of the bed. No heavy weight pressed against my back. Just quiet. Pure, unbroken quiet. I blinked a few times, letting myself fully wake up. It felt different. Lighter somehow. Usually, I'd feel that pit of anxiety as soon as I opened my eyes. The feeling that something was wrong. The pressure of knowing I'd have to check my phone. See if David had texted to say he was working late, or meeting a client. Not today. Today, I didn't care where he was. I sat up, stretching my arms over my head, feeling my muscles pull and loosen. My neck popped once sharp but satisfying. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and glanced at the other side of the bed. The clean sheets were still smooth, untouched. Empty. The sight of it should have made me feel lonely, but instead I felt free. I slid out of bed, bare feet touching the cool hardwood. For once, I didn't feel like I had to rush. No reason to check his schedule. No reason to wonder where he was, or who he was texting. I padded down the hallway toward the kitchen, still in my oversized t-shirt and shorts. Hair a mess, face unwashed, and I didn't care. No one to impress anymore. When I got to the kitchen, I paused in the doorway. The sunlight had reached in here too, lighting up the countertops in soft yellow. The wine bottle was still on the counter, the cork resting next to it like a tiny reminder of everything I'd done last night. I tilted my head, eyes narrowing at it. Should I clean up? For a moment, I just stood there staring at it. The bottle, the cork, the empty glass next to the sink. It felt like a still frame from a movie, a shot of the aftermath. A visual cue for the audience that something big had happened. A shift. A change. I grabbed the bottle and dumped the rest of it down the sink. It gurgled as the dark red liquid spiraled away. Gone. No más. No trace. No stains left behind. I washed the glass, put it back in the cabinet, and wiped down the counter. Clean. Fresh. New. I leaned against the counter, arms folded, letting my eyes wander around the kitchen. It looked bigger somehow. I noticed things I hadn't paid attention to in a long time. The little chip on the edge of the countertop. The scuff marks on the floor where David used to drag his chair back too hard. The house had been ours once. Now it was mine. My phone buzzed on the counter, pulling me out of my thoughts. For a split second, I braced myself, expecting to see his name again. David. Another plea. Another apology. But it wasn't him. It was Emma. Emma. Breakfast or brunch? Pick one. I'm kidnapping you. I smiled, really smiled this time. The kind that reaches your eyes. Me. Brunch. I'm not a morning person anymore. Emma. Oh meo. Anymore, she says. You never were. Be ready in 30. I shook my head, still smiling. Emma always knew how to drag me out of my head, out of my house, and back into the world. She didn't give me room to wallow, didn't let me sink too deep into my own thoughts. Everyone needs a friend like that. I pushed off the counter, walking back to my room with a new sense of purpose. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye as I passed it. I stopped. Really stopped. For the first time, I actually looked at myself. Not the version of me that I used to check for flaws before a date night. Not the version of me that tilted her head to see if she still looked pretty enough. Just me. My hair was wild, sticking up in all the wrong directions. My eyes were still puffy from sleep. The oversized t-shirt I was wearing had a small bleach stain on the hem, and my shorts were wrinkled. But I looked strong. Not beautiful. Not put together. Just strong. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I ran a hand through my hair, smoothing it down, but I didn't reach for a brush. I didn't need to fix it. I didn't need to fix me. I was fine. I was more than fine. I walked to my dresser and pulled out jeans, a black tank top, and a light denim jacket. Nothing fancy, just me, simple and comfortable. I didn't check myself in the mirror this time. I didn't need to. When I walked back into the kitchen, I heard it before I saw it. A knock at the front door. Not the sharp, impatient knock of a delivery driver, but a slow, deliberate knock. 3 slow taps. My heart stopped. For a second I didn't move. My eyes locked on the front door, every muscle in my body tense. My brain already knew who it was, but I didn't want to believe it. Don't answer it, I told myself. Don't give him the satisfaction. But my feet moved before I could stop them. Slowly, I crossed the living room, each step heavier than the last. My breath was shallow, my fingers flexing at my sides. When I reached the door, I stood there for a moment, staring at it like it was a wild animal that might attack. Another knock. This time softer. Pleading. I pressed my palm flat against the door, feeling the cool wood under my hand. I closed my eyes, letting out a slow, controlled breath. Don't open it. But I didn't listen. I turned the lock. The sound echoed too loud in the quiet. I gripped the handle, turned it slowly, and pulled the door open just an inch. Just enough to see. There he was. David. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, eyes downcast like a child who'd been sent to the principal's office. His hair was messy, like he'd run his hands through it 1,000 times on the drive over. His eyes looked tired, dark circles under them. The same shirt he'd left in last night, wrinkled and unbuttoned at the collar. Hey, he said, voice low and soft, like I might slam the door in his face if he spoke too loud. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. I watched him shift from one foot to the other, his eyes flicking up to meet mine, then back down again. He couldn't hold my gaze. He never could, not when he knew he was caught. Can we talk? He asked. His voice cracked on the last word. Please. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. About what? He blinked like he didn't expect me to ask that. About us, he said. About everything. He rubbed the back of his neck, looking at the ground. I just want to explain. I tilted my head. Explain what, David? His eyes finally met mine, desperate and raw. That it was a mistake. I stared at him for a long, quiet moment. He waited, eyes searching mine for something. Forgiveness, maybe. Hope. Something he was never going to get. Do you remember? I said slowly, my voice sharp but calm. When I asked you about Rachel at that company dinner? He winced. His eyes squeezed shut for half a second, and his shoulders sagged. Yeah, he muttered. And do you remember what you said to me? His eyes stayed on the ground. I said she was just a friend. Right, I said, nodding. And now you're standing here on my doorstep, after booking a hotel room for 2 adults with that friend. He sucked in a breath like I'd punched him. His eyes shot up to mine, wide and frantic. I'm sorry, he said quickly.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I stepped back, gripping the door handle. My voice was steady, calm, solid. Don't come back, David. I shut the door in his face. I didn't hear him knock again. This time I locked it. For good. I stood there for a moment, my hand still gripping the lock, my forehead resting lightly against the cool wood of the door. My breathing was slow, steady, controlled, but inside everything was buzzing. Not with fear. Not with doubt. Just this quiet, electric clarity. I wasn't angry anymore. Not like I had been last night. The rage had burned itself out, leaving only this sharp, clean feeling behind. Relief. Closure. Finality. I stayed like that for a few seconds longer, just listening. No footsteps outside. No more knocking. No pleading voice on the other side of the door. He was gone. I knew he was. And even if he came back, it wouldn't matter. I wasn't opening that door again. Not for him. Not for anyone like him. I walked away, feeling lighter with every step. Each footfall felt like I was shedding another layer of something I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. By the time I reached the kitchen, it was like I walked right out of the past and into something new. Something quieter. Mine. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Emma's messages. Me change of plans. Brunch is on me. Emma. Oh ho ho, she's feeling bold today. Love it. I'm on my way. I smiled to myself, shaking my head. Emma never missed a beat. While I waited, I went back to the bedroom to finish what I'd started. His clothes were still on the floor, wrinkled, stained, and useless. I crouched down, picking up one of his white dress shirts. The wine stain had set in overnight, deep and dark like old rust. I held it up to the light, turning it in my hands. Not my problem. I grabbed an empty trash bag from the closet and started tossing everything in. The shirts, the pants, the socks he never remembered to pick up. Every last scrap of him. I didn't fold them. I didn't shake them out. I didn't treat them like they belonged to a person. They didn't. They were just things now. The last item I picked up was his cologne bottle from the dresser. It was half full, the same bottle he'd been using for years. I stared at it for a moment, debating. It wasn't mine. I didn't want it. But I didn't want it sitting here either. I unscrewed the cap and poured the entire thing down the bathroom sink. The sharp, spicy scent filled the air instantly. That smell that used to make me think, he's getting ready for something special. Now it just smelled like a lie. The bottle made a dull clinking sound as I tossed it into the trash bag with the rest of his things. I tied the bag shut tight, twisting it like I was wringing the last bit of him out of my life. Then I carried it to the front door, opened it just far enough to slide the bag outside, and let it drop with a thud onto the porch. It would stay there until trash day, just like the rest of the garbage. When I closed the door this time, I felt it, that shift. Not a small one. Not something I'd have to convince myself of later. No, this one was big. Deep. Like I'd closed a door that would never be opened again. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Instead, I grabbed my purse, slipped on my sneakers, and pulled on my denim jacket. Emma would be here soon, and for the first time in a long time I felt like seeing people. Like being out in the world. I checked my phone one last time. No messages from David. No missed calls. No apologies waiting to be read. I scrolled to his contact name, stared at it for a second, and tapped block. It didn't feel dramatic. It didn't feel like some big moment. It felt like swiping a speck of dust off a windowsill. I didn't think about him again. When Emma pulled up outside, she honked twice. Quick, playful beeps like she was calling me out to play. I grabbed my keys and stepped outside, breathing in the fresh air. It smelled clean. Cold but fresh. The kind of air that fills your lungs and makes you feel awake. Emma waved at me from the driver's seat, grinning like she just won the lottery. I climbed into the passenger seat, tossing my purse into the back. She glanced at me with a smirk, raising one eyebrow. You look different, she said, turning the wheel as we pulled away from the curb. Doi? I asked, glancing at my reflection in the side mirror. I still looked like me, same face, same hair, same everything. But Emma was right. Something was different. Yup, she said, tapping her fingers on the steering wheel to the beat of the music playing on the radio. You look like someone who just dropped 100 pounds of dead weight. I laughed, really laughed, the kind that comes from your chest, not your throat. More like 190, I muttered, and Emma let out a bark of laughter so loud it startled me. Girl, she said, wiping a fake tear from her eye. I swear you should have dumped him ages ago. I would have thrown you a party. This brunch is the party, I said, leaning back into the seat, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. Damn right it is, Emma grinned, turning the music up louder. The rest of the drive was filled with the kind of music that you sing along to even if you don't know the words. Emma was drumming on the wheel, offbeat but happy. I didn't sing, but I hummed along, letting the sound of it fill me up. We got to the cafe a little after 10 a.m. It was one of those cute, trendy places with string lights hanging from the ceiling and little succulents on every table. I'd been here before, but something about it looked brighter today. I didn't realize it at first, but as I followed Emma inside, I noticed myself looking up. Not at my phone. Not at my feet. We found a small table in the corner, the kind with the high stools that wobble just a little when you sit. Emma ordered French toast with strawberries. I got a breakfast sandwich with bacon, egg, and cheese. For once I didn't pick at my food. I didn't eat carefully or politely like I used to when I was with David. I just ate. God, it tasted good. Emma was mid-rant about some drama at her job when she stopped, her eyes narrowing as she leaned forward. "Wait," she said, tilting her head. "You're smiling." I blinked. "What?" "Your face," she said, pointing at me with her fork. "You're smiling. Like a real one." I touched my face like I'd forgotten what it felt like. She was right. I hadn't even noticed. "Yeah," I said, shrugging. "I guess I am." Emma grinned like she just caught me in a lie. "See? Told you. Drop that dead weight and now you're glowing." She sat back, arms crossed like she'd just proven a point in court. "You're free, babe. No more walking on eggshells. No more checking his phone. No more pretending you don't see the signs." "Yeah," I said softly, looking down at my plate. "Free." The word echoed in my head like a song stuck on repeat. Free. I looked up at Emma, and for the first time in a long time I said it out loud. "I'm free." Her eyes softened. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her grip firm but warm. "Damn right you are," she said. The waitress brought the check, and Emma snatched it off the table before I could even reach for it. She waved me off with a grin. "I'm paying," she said. "Consider it a welcome back to yourself gift." I didn't argue. I just sat there sipping my coffee, feeling the warmth settle deep in my chest. Outside, the world was still moving. Cars passed. People walked. Leaves swirled on the sidewalk in slow circles. I watched it all, and for the first time I didn't feel like I was chasing it. I was part of it. I was here. When Emma stood up, I followed her out into the crisp air, the sun shining just a little brighter than before. And as we walked down the street side by side, I didn't look back. Not once.